I can't wait to get back on the road again. Back again. Dude, like for the baggers.
Back home again.
Back home again.
In
Indiana land.
Hello everybody, welcome to this episode of Dirtyard Dish. I'm your host today, Will Smithey, and I am joined with a very, very special guest in Jorf Porsson. Jorf, how we doing?
Hey, Will, honor and a privilege to be here on the illustrious Dirtyard Dish podcast, a real highlight of my career here thus far.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, Jorf is the new official wiffle ball insider for Circle City Wiffle Ball. People that were following the free agency saw his tweets out, dropping all his Jorf bombs. He was really, really getting into it right away.
Yeah, that's what we all live for in the industry is the ability and the opportunity to drop a Jorf bomb. It gets me up in the morning.
So how did you get into kind of just the insider game and wiffle ball, and just what is the background from you getting to this spot in your career?
Yeah, it's a great question. This was the first year that I really got the chance to shine as a reporter on the wiffle ball circuit. Who most recently, right? Biggest sports breaking news in recent memory has to be the Luka Doncic trade, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like the electricity. In that case, it happened in the middle of the night, but when you start seeing those like tweets come in from a Woj or an Adam Schefter or whatever, and it starts as like a rumor, like, oh, we're thinking about this, and then there's your sources report, and then there's your breaking report. It's sometimes as exciting as following the action on the field itself. And so it's just something I wanted to be able to create. And wiffle ball, a sport on the rise with a vacancy in the breaking news reporting section. So was just happy to fill in. And the way that free agency across sports works, it's every other sport takes months, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a week of frenzied action. Just tons of fun, tons of electricity, and there was definitely plenty going on this year to be able to talk about.
And it was definitely hard hitting information. Like you said, it was fast, it was furious, and you were on each one. One of the questions I know that me and a lot of other people just had were, how were you able to kind of create some of these relationships so quick, just getting into like the wiffle ball insider, I guess, background.
Sure. That's a reporter's bread and butter, right? You got to be able to get folks to trust you with the information, to know that it's not gonna leak in such a way that's detrimental to them. And I think ultimately the biggest thing with this league and free agency was that guys were excited themselves about what was going on, right? So when somebody heard something, or somebody, even a player himself, was weighing an option or close to a decision, they wanted to be able to share that, with me to ultimately share with the rest of the league and the community. So um, a lot of willingness from the guys, and I think being able to earn that trust of knowing you can share this sourced report with me, and I'm not gonna let it leak back to its source.
Mm-hmm. And it was really good. It was really good that guys were able to feel comfortable with you so quick in that relationship, just to try to get that out there. It created such great buzz for our league. I think it definitely helped kind of know where different people needed to go, whether that was like coaches to players, players to coaches, just different things like that. So I think that was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Created so much content for the league too, which was really, really nice.
I mean, you've seen my headshot up on social media. It's just a face that invites trust and and respect. So, you know, it can't it I come by it naturally, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
In a fully professional way too, like the head side. It's just this guy means business. He's there to give the
Of
people what they
course.
want. And they need to know the information, and you're going to give it to them.
Yeah, and like as a coach yourself, you're probably able to speak to, or like there's a competitive advantage sometimes too
Hmm.
to having some sort of information get out, right? Maybe you want the rest of the league to know, hey, I'm in on this guy or I'm not on this guy, and maybe that you hope that that influences, you know, other teams to respond one way or another based on that. So I think there's maybe some motivation there from people in your position too.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I could see, trying to get the information out that you're on a guy in hopes of either two things, in hopes that nobody else is trying to get that guy, or in hopes
Hmm.
that everybody now tries to get on this guy. And maybe you can actually sneak somebody else into the background.
Sure. Yeah.
So kind of,
Yeah, I'm interested, not to go off
mhm.
script here, but Will, as a coach yourself who is obviously involved in the free agency, did you learn anything new from the reporting, that, information that hadn't already made its way to you? Did it affect the way that you know, made some moves, or affected your strategy at all?
Definitely. I didn't know, especially because for me, I was kind of on the lower tier guys was kind of more what I was needing to
Right.
kind of go after. I knew Tyler was going to come back to me. Connor Young, my rookie from last year, had expressed a lot of interest that he wanted to stay in Moonshot, so I didn't think I'd have a lot of trouble getting him. So kind of just
Yeah.
learning where the lower like ones and fives values were going, or who was at least interested in
Hmm.
them, kind of gave me the opportunity on to kind of pitch my side of things for the Moonshots, saying like, hey, you may get more innings or more at bats with my team, or you may fit in a role like this, whether that's better for you on my team or not compared to the others. It just gave me a little bit of more opportunity, I feel like, to really give my side of the persuasion for the Moonshots compared to
Sure.
not knowing what else their other option is for, and just kind of telling them my plan and actually seeing if that's going to help them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, makes total sense.
And just like speaking of like me just going through the free agencies and you kind of dropping it, what was your kind of view from this first free agency standpoint? I know you kind of briefed on it a little bit but more from just a
Sure.
reporter side of things, having to be the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it went great. Like the worst way that this goes is like, oh, everybody's coming back to the same teams,
Hmm.
or um, it's everybody just reuniting with their buddies or whatever. But yeah, there was obviously some really extreme shakeups that created a lot of chaos to come. There was a lot of uncertainty on, especially in those first couple
Hmm.
days, how certain teams were going to approach free agency. I think one of the most like interesting to follow stories and like progressions of things happened in day like 2 and 3,
Hmm.
right? Um with the Stampede in particular, and that it was one of those things early on, and this was some of the reporting at the time, was almost of like of confusion, or of um I don't know, not really understanding the Stampede's direction, right? Because first is like, okay, they're not pushing hard for
Hmm.
Whitty. They told Mitch that there's not a spot for him to come back. And at first you look at those things and it's like, what is their strategy here, especially at the time, before some later reporting came out. And then it started to trickle down from there, right? Like you hear, okay, the Aiden and Holden are looking to team back up,
Hmm.
and so now that the possible teams for that becomes pretty limited. And then you hear, okay, the Yackers are in on Buckman, and then it all kind of comes together, right?
Hmm.
So it's one of those situations where I never heard directly like the Stampede are trying to sign Aiden and Holden, but you can put those pieces together, right? Like they want to get back together. It's not going to be with the Yackers. The Stampede have held off on some other options. So okay, like all these pieces fit together now, right? Like um that's what's going to happen. And so yes, just stuff like that, right? Where even it's not the most nobody's making a video about it or whatever, but it's fun and exciting to kind of follow those threads, and ultimately be able to make sense of everything.
Yeah, and I think kind of throughout that free agency with those couple days that you mentioned, you could kind of see kind of your tweets and insidering. I say insidering, I don't know what would be the right verb for that, but
No, that's great.
just getting more kind of following the path where it's like, oh, I'm getting more information here, kind of leading to the way where then as a coach from the outside perspective, now it's like, oh, now I can kind of see some of these teams that they may or may not be talking to me, the other coaches, where it's like, oh, now I can see what they're doing, how they're kind of putting some things together, especially from a silent standpoint. Because for me, those first few days were big because I can't sign any of those. I couldn't sign any of those big guys.
Right.
But kind of following the path, your tweets, what coaches were or weren't telling me, and kind of figuring out where some guys led would, allow me to see who's going to be available to fill in good roles for my team or different things like that. So I thought it was really good. I know you mentioned the Stampede, but yeah, they start out, the rumor is they're not in on Whitty. They're releasing Mitch is probably one of the best number 2 pitchers a team usually has on their league, borderline number 1, just depending on how many, arms they have. And so kind of hearing that, just a lot of question marks, like what are they trying to do? Can they even get the Palmers together? From my perspective, I wasn't sure if they would work with the cap and they were able to fit it all in together. So it was definitely something that was worth a follow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the most slept on, like, shocking thing for me was, not just the culmination of everything that Stampede did, but even individually Aiden moving on from the Yackers to the Stampede, just from, like, the last 2 years with the Yackers were, like, probably Aiden's best 2 seasons he's ever had, right? Like,
Definitely.
and obviously the credit for that goes to Aiden more than it goes to anything else, but you would think, like, he's probably pretty interested in running it back to a situation that has worked out really well for him. So the fact that he was interested in and then ultimately pulled the trigger on shaking that up was pretty surprising to me, early on.
That's a very good point. Because I would say since I've been in the league, those were by far the 2 best seasons Aiden had, really all around. He definitely more consistent on the mound, but just as at the plate, he's just getting better and better too throughout the season. So had to be a huge move for him to do it. Had to feel like he was actually moving on to something better. And I think at the end of the day, when he's sitting there with his brothers and stuff, I think he's going to be very, very happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Stampede have put together one of the more, rounded out groups here at this point. It's an interesting roster for sure.
I agree. I think they have to look at maybe a third pitcher a little bit, but I think both Cade and Dawson are willing to work to kind of figure out if one of them can eat up some innings kind of in those third games. But having Aiden Holden at the top, they'll fill those 2 games out, no problem.
Yeah, Dawson is an interesting one to keep an eye on, I think, in that, did Dawson pitch in college? Is that right?
Yeah, he was a college pitcher. He's kind of a right-handed submarine type guy. Definitely one, I think, if he could get the innings, that knows he can throw a couple pitches, just maybe doesn't know where they go yet. So I could see him possibly figuring it out a little bit. Cade can hit the board, we know. He's still working on some more stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I would love to see this year is if Dawson can get some, a good chunk of innings to see what he can do out there. Because, it hasn't happened for him yet, but this could be the year.
And with all the rule changes this year, I think it would definitely be a good year to get a guy like him some innings just from a league perspective.
Yeah.
So kind of talking, I know we're talking here about kind of the Stampede, moving a little bit in silence here at the start, kind of go through it. From your perspective, different coaches, different teams, did you have to work any differently to try to get some information from teams? Were some teams different than others in your sources? Kind of how did that go along for you for this first free agency?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it spread across the whole range, right? Like some guys were texting me, like I wasn't asking questions. They were texting me just to tell, hey, I'm doing this or I'm hearing this. So shout out to those guys. They know who they are. Really feeding the Twitter machine. And other teams and, players were like silent. I would even, reach out and get kind of non-answers from guys, which is of course, totally they're within their rights to do so. But it was definitely interesting to know that, as it goes on too, you can start to feel out like all right, if I'm, for instance, if Dudas is telling me something like it's true,
Hmm.
right? He's telling me information that's validated. If Rudy's telling me something, it's not necessarily true.
Yeah, may have to
And not
decipher a little
because,
bit.
yeah, and it's because he's keeping his cards closer to his chest, right? And that's fair. But yeah, it was really interesting. I loved when players submitted information too. We had a form up in the Discord and on the website where people could submit their news too. And some of the juiciest stuff that we received were self-reported from players like that. So
That's exciting.
um, yeah, fun to see for sure.
Yeah, really glad guys were getting into it and kind of wanting some of their information to be kind of reported out on different things
Uh-huh.
instead of just leaving it all into the background. I thought it made for a lot of great content and signings, so that was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I wonder if you can comment on one of the anonymous reports that I did receive, in that you were heard being said, you were heard saying that wiffle ball season is the best thing to happen to me this year, um, which, with the upcoming birth of your first child may have gotten you in some hot water. Do you care to report or respond to these
Yeah,
allegations?
that was completely false allegations. It will not be the best thing to happen to me this year. If I had to just guess an anonymous report, like I'm just gonna guess and throw out Jones out there. Jones always seems to try to be getting me in trouble with something. So, who's also having it coming up and having a baby this year too. So he needs to watch what he's
Yeah.
doing. Maybe I can try to get him in trouble as well. So
There you go. Well, yeah, breaking news. This is a fabricated report. Uh, Will is plenty excited about the birth of his child,
yeah,
more so than wiffle ball.
extremely excited about the birth. I think the quote was it was like usually like my favorite weekends of the year were with like wiffle ball tournament weekends. I think is what was being talked about,
Yeah,
and then somebody decided to then post something about me not being as excited for my kid, and it's like that's not even close to being what we were talking about. Just pure blasphemy.
yeah. Can I ask about one other piece of reporting too that you might have some insight on? And that this was one of the first bits of info I got that this is going to be T. Greg's retirement tour. This may have come from the horse of the mouth, or the mouth of the horse rather itself. So,
Yeah, I can.
obviously,
I
yeah.
will comment. I have talked to Tyler. He is the one that anonymously put that in there.
Okay.
I would not. I am hopeful that it's not his last year. I know last year
Yeah.
it was a very hard summer for him getting there. He had a second kid. They were moving houses. He was kind of working out of town most days and having to
Yeah.
drive a lot. I'm hoping this year, since those three things aren't happening, it will be better to
Right.
maybe where he's like, you know what, I can keep doing this a little bit longer. But
Yeah.
as of right now, I'll let him like officially confirm or deny when it is his last year. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna hope it's not. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody would agree with that. Obviously he's a great player, been around in the league forever, a great guy to have around. So, but everybody reaches the end of their wiffle career at some point.
And last year I know was really really hard on him. This year, like I said, those things are all kind of done. He's still got the two boys at home, so that's still going to be tough.
Right.
But I think he lives about 20 minutes closer now to the field than before. I think it was like maybe a 45-minute drive. Now it's probably like a 15 to 20 for him. So
Oh yeah,
there's
that's
definitely some
huge.
things that I think could help his favor out depending on how it goes on the Wednesdays. Sundays for the spring, I told him, if you got to miss some of those, you can miss some of those. We're not too worried about that.
Yeah.
Have some time at home. So we'll see how it
Yeah,
goes.
fair enough. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
I mean, and kind of just speaking on, reporting on the rumors and things like that. Now that we're through the free agency period, I know you mentioned a link people could kind of go post different things in. Do you have any ideas on possible reporting like through the season? Is this something that you're going to continue to look into, or is this going to be mainly strictly
Sure.
like an off-season type deal?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's, in the TBD sort of state right now, and that, yeah, like the frenzy of activity during free agency is definitely the Jorf
Hmm.
Porsson uh Super Bowl, so to
Yeah,
speak.
that's the
But
peak
yeah,
for sure.
there's certainly stuff to, to be had during the season too. I think that one thing that I would love to see is more action or activity kind of on the, you know, roster movement side of things during the year. Trades are hard to pull off in CCW for a
Hmm.
number of reasons, but the changes that were made with the waiver system, um, and some notable guys who haven't signed up, who, to our understanding, might still sign up at some point during the season, will hopefully create some roster movement. So, you can rest assured that whenever there's news to break, I'll be on top of it. Just may not be uh the most consistent thing here going forward.
That makes sense. Yeah, we don't usually have a whole lot of mid-season activity in our league. I was thinking one thing is if guys are willing to kind of point out if they're going to be like missing time for like vacations or somebody
Yeah.
gets injured, stuff like that. You could possibly do some reporting, on the injured list or IL or whatever they call it nowadays. But
Yeah.
other than that, I didn't think there'd be a whole lot of information to really talk about during the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like so and so, you know, stepped on a Hot Wheels and is going to be out for a week and a half or whatever. That'd be good.
Yeah, or like last
Good
year.
reporting.
Last year, I think between the rainouts and then I had Mitch
Yeah.
Unforsall, who went on a family vacation in Minnesota. He was gone for like a month and a half. We didn't see him like almost the
Yeah.
whole summer, and we are like, "Hey, Mitch, are you still playing?" He's like, "Yeah, I've been out of town." I was like, maybe we could have gotten that reported, so I could have figured out if I needed to add a guy at that point in the season or
Right.
not.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, would definitely, appreciate the reports of availability and um injury and all that.
So I need now that like we kind of have everybody signed to teams and we're getting into the season from kind of an impartial outside perspective. How do you think the teams are like looking going into the season? Kind of maybe go through some of the teams here if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, yeah. This was really fun to follow, and like, as the pieces kind of came into place, you would see the evolution of these rosters as they were built, right?
Hmm.
So it's fun to say. We keep talking about the Stampede, but like that's one that at the start of the free agency, it's like, ooh, like how are they gonna turn this around and put together a competitive team? But now, you know, when you look at it, their completed product is like, yeah, this is looking like a really strong group.
Very good
So
team.
uh, I think what's really interesting is the way that like different teams have strategized or prioritized like building their rosters in that, and it makes it, I think, hard to rank. I don't know. I struggle to think back and think if this has always been true or if this is kind of a newer thing for this year, but like you've got, a lot of different ways that rosters are constructed, right? Not just because of like the limitations of the cap, but I think like from a strategy perspective too. I think like looking at, your moonshots and the eight balls, for instance, as like counters to each other are really interesting in that both of you had, yourself and Reed to start things out. So you've got that 100 player or that 100 value player to start with, and you've got to fill in around there. And, after T Greg, moonshots are full of like flyers,
Yeah,
like
extremely young.
guys, yeah, young guys, less experience, but a lot of upside. I think that Connor Young, rookie of the year last year, obviously has further upside. I think Ian probably has the most upside of any one cost guy in the league. Connor Smith, obviously, probably the youngest guy in the league.
Yes.
And then you compare that to the eight balls, and it's after Reed, it's Gerchef, House, Wilsey, and Berninger. And it's like they've got four high floor, low ceiling guys instead, right? Where it's like, that all of those guys are going to show up and give you value. They're going to hit in the middle of the order. They're going to, throw 20 innings, and it's going to be good. but none of them are going to win an award, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, it makes it tough to rank, you know,
Definitely.
like looking at just, yeah, the different ways that teams are built.
Yeah, because with the eight balls there, like I mean, talk about like giving you value. You know what role each of those guys are probably going to fill in on a team. You know they're going to
Right.
give you like that role every time. They're not going to like struggle with it. Whereas like with my moonshots, I'm going to have to kind of fit some pieces in together and kind of see who stands out at certain spots to kind of see who takes over something like that. So definitely with having
Yeah.
roughly the same cap value guys all the way through, two very very different like strategies and scenarios and on how to like build a team and how it's going to work.
Yeah. It's like, you know, if you play the show or out of the
Hmm.
park or something, it's like the guys on the eight balls, their potential is the same number as their
Hmm.
overall, you know, but the guys on your team, their overall may be lower to start, but their potential is higher than the the overall the eight balls guys. So
Can
um,
definitely lead to some big differences in games, whether guys are on or
yeah,
not, things like that.
we can try and whip up a power rankings here if you want to.
We can if you want. I mean, for me, like until somebody beats Witty, I'm going to keep putting Witty at the top of the list. So that for me, that's going to be the
Yeah,
short shorts. After that, like looking at whole teams, I think I'm gonna go probably Stampede. I think they're just the deepest all around like 6-man team.
hmm,
And I think the Hounds are right there after. I think the Hounds have the best. I think personally the Hounds have the best 3-man pitching if Sprink is
yeah,
there all year with Sprink, Mitch, and then
yep,
Allis as the three. I think could be probably the best one.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I think that the Yackers may give them a run for their money as far as the best top three goes.
I can't remember who the
Um,
Yakkers' third pitcher is as of right now.
D. Louis,
Oh yes, D. Louis.
who's
Yeah.
kind of like the platonic ideal of the third arm.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
with
like
all this, he may not be on the
perfect.
board, but you know D. Louis is going to be on the board, so you know he's going to eat all
Yep.
the innings. That's a good point.
He's going to be on the board. He's going to keep you in games. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that makes it tough because they're then right there too. I mean, eight balls in my team with the moonshots with me and Reed at the top. It's hard to beat us. So if we're
Yep.
doing a playoff rankings come playoff time where you don't have to have the three pitchers, I think that boosts us up a little bit. But then
Yeah.
if we're doing strictly regular season with the 3-man, I think we're down there like we could be fifth and sixth, not really knowing
Yeah.
how well our second and third arms are going to match up to some of the Hounds, Stampede,
Right.
and Yackers type deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's a pretty big open question for the shorts too. Like, you know, the downside to having a truly elite guy is obviously that you've got to fill in around him. So I think, yeah, I think we'll get to like things to look for here in a second, but the shorts like pitching depth is something that I is probably a hole for that team.
Yeah, I think for them it's really going to be, is this the year Dudas can finally pitch consistent innings?
Yeah.
If he can do that, I think they have a really really good team there. If he's able to step in for 2 to 3 innings in some of these series, if he can't give them
Yeah.
any innings after Whitty, Lago's going to give them a lot of innings, but then it's going to get
Yeah.
exponentially tougher for them at that point.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, the way we're talking about this now, I think we can just go right into kind of what we think each team would kind of look for as far as like people stepping up or what we think they need.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think the have some notes here on just about every team and what like some swing points might be for each of them. Like I think just going down the list, like the eight balls, I think the bottom half of the order is the biggest question mark, right? Like Reed had a great offensive season last year. Gerchev's gotten pretty consistent offensively, and then Housie's a good guy to have in your three hole too. And then after that they've got to hope for some progression from Wilsey or Bernie, right?
Yeah,
Like eight ball's biggest problem last year, you know, Werner, Gerchev, and Allis had really good offensive years, and they got nothing from the four hole, right?
agreed.
They're like already set up to have more production there than they did last year. Obviously, it's impossible to replace Ollis's offensive value with what the eight balls had available. But um, I think the years that Housey and Jay and Bernie have offensively will be really important to the eight ball's success.
Definitely, and another thing with those three guys that you mentioned is they're all capable of putting the ball in play fast pitch consistently, which I think
Yep.
could be huge, especially if Reed and Gerchif are continuously on base like they've been the last
Yeah.
couple years. The fourth hole last year for you guys or for the eight ball struggled being a guy that like got on base or just had productive at bats where regardless
Yep.
of who steps up into the like which two out of those three step up into three and fourth hole, they're going to be on base, they're going to battle, they're going to at least get to some slow pitches and stuff like that to try to
Yeah. No
up the
doubt.
offense for the eight balls, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. The shorts, for as much as we've talked about, obviously the splash of landing Witty,
Hmm.
like I'm imagining a world when Loggle's on the mound and they've got Dudas and Witty in the field.
Hmm.
Like, if you hit a ball and it's in play, do you have any chance of being safe at first? Like,
It's a good question.
they're going to cover so much ground
So
out
much
there.
ground.
Like, I think that's going to be could be a huge X factor, right? Like, is the speed and the defense that the shorts have. I think they're going to win games just based on that.
Yeah, and they
And then
have.
Unversaw's there too,
Yeah,
right? So if one of them is on the mound, then Unversaw fills in and he's, just as fast as they are.
just as fast as them. Devin Hensley, who they've added, has played in the league before. He's very
Yeah.
fast and can move as well. Those four, I can't think of a more athletic four in the league than them right there.
Yeah.
Whitty has had his struggles catching some fly balls sometimes, so I would say
Sure.
maybe just hope you can catch one in the wind over on Whitty's side, and if he drops it, just keep running. But if you hit
Right.
anything near Dudas, it's an out. I mean, we all know that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's gonna be
Yeah.
fun
We
to
talked
see.
to, yeah, it will. Yeah. That's going to be an electric team. Talked about the Hounds a little bit already and their pitching. I think that, like you said, if all of them are there and, hit their 80% outcomes,
Hmm.
like it's the best rotation in the league. But there's like some real question marks there, right?
Hmm.
And that Sprink hasn't necessarily been super consistently at the dirt yard the last couple years. Like they'll be relying on him
Hmm.
for a full, 25 innings. Um, Bias is, yeah, like you said, the best number two arm in the league. If he can keep that up, it's a great spot. And then Ollis is, we saw last year, is like a strike per at bat
Hmm.
away from being really
He's
good.
that close. Yeah.
But if Sprink's not around, if Mitch takes a step back, if Ollis doesn't take a step forward, like you're looking at a situation where there might be a lot of slow pitch counts, a lot of guys on base, right? Like, and so I think they'll really be relying on those guys to be there and, you know, taking a step forward um, to have a good, successful year.
They definitely want those guys to take kind of those steps you jumped. It's funny because we talk about the Hounds, but we always know that Jones can just come in and throw if he has to now.
Right.
And it's always met with mixed results because he always has a game or two where he comes in and holds a team to like 2 to 4 runs through a few innings,
Yeah.
and that's a win for the
Yeah.
Hounds standpoint. But every once in a while, like a team just hits him really well, so it doesn't matter. So then you see he gets like no pitching value from that. But if you really look into
Right.
kind of his per game pitching when he has to come in, definitely is good enough sometimes to like get the outs and keep
Yeah.
the team in it. So that'll be intriguing to kind of see what they do. And I know I keep talking about Ollis. He really is one strike away per at bat. I think almost
Yeah.
there was one game us Moonshots played against him last year. I think maybe the first 10 or 12 at bats were full count, and we swung
Yeah.
at some, we swung at didn't. It's just one of those where he throws hard enough that you can't really just sit there and react and say, oh, that's a strike and go. You almost have to kind of choose it. And with his
Hmm.
movement and how close he is, those strikes that are hit the board, they're not middle strikes. They're glancing off the corners,
Yeah.
things like that. He makes
Yeah.
it really tough. If he can just get one more in at bat, his value and his pitching ability is just going to skyrocket.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. The Yackers, I think, are one of the bigger high variance teams in the league too, and that Um, you've got Buckman, who is coming back from a few years away. He was elite when he was last here, but
Elite.
who knows how a few years off affects things. And then even just like the offensive profile, right, of Thomas, Rudy, and Sawyer. Like these are dudes who are trying to hit the ball over the fence every time, right?
Yeah.
And it worked out really well for them last year. But if we get in some rough weather, the ball's not carrying out. Um, who knows if they'll be able to repeat the offensive production. I will say though, there was a workout which I think some clips made its way onto the CCW social media platforms, where Buck was throwing some live BP
Hmm.
yesterday, and he did look pretty nasty. So I think for the most part, we can expect him to pick up about where he left off.
That's good. That's dangerous for the league if he comes back to where he left off. I mean,
Yeah,
he was a just certified number one pitcher in our league. No doubt about it. I think the Yackers,
yeah,
from kind of my standpoint, looking at him, is going to be who's going to step up in that fourth hitting role. It's going to be
yep,
Buckman and D. Louie. Both aren't known for their bats. D. Louie
yep,
can take guys deep, slow pitch wise, but fast pitch they've not shown to be too capable of being, like, really consistent, like ball and play guys all the time that you're kind of looking for that
yep,
fourth one. So between those two and then Colton Cantrell, they're gonna have to somebody's gonna have to win that job, and I think depending on who wins that job and how well they do could be a big swing for them this year.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Moonshots we talked about it a little bit already, but I think the rotation, after yourself is probably the biggest question mark here, and that the other teams, the short shorts and the eight balls, have a little bit more of a proven number two, not a great number two, but at least somebody who's
Who's thrown consistent
proven and shown
innings
the ability to, yeah,
for sure,
exactly, yeah,
for
throw
sure.
innings, hit the board. And I'd imagine that right now you're probably lining up Ian and Connor Young after yourself, which again, tons of upside, not necessarily the proven results quite yet. So that could be a really good rotation by the end of the year, or it could fall off pretty hard after your innings.
It's gonna be something we're gonna have to toy with. Yeah, Connor Young, Connor Smith, and Ian Garvelia are the three that we're gonna be trying to work them. The idea is to not have anybody else throw besides us four. The goal,
Yeah,
don't need to add T. Greg out there. Don't need to throw Cody Fowler out there. That's kind of the purpose and the plan. I'm gonna
yeah,
have my work cut out for me. It's definitely like a coach standpoint.
right.
I'm big on, I feel like, just teaching guys how to throw the clean ball. I think I can do that really well and work with guys. So I
Hmm.
think that's one of the selling points that got me a few of these guys. So I'm going to try to work on that
Yeah,
pretty hard this year just to try to get them more consistent. All of them are young, which means they're going to be able to
yep,
throw the ball. I mean, that's great in a
yeah,
standpoint. So as long as they can spin it correctly, hopefully they can hit the board. So we'll go from there with
yeah,
them.
yeah. Connor Young got a good amount of innings last year. I know
Yeah.
he struggled to consistently be on the board, but I think we said in our write ups, like, would be far from the first guy to take a year before he could, figure it out, and then becomes really solid after that. So,
Yeah, and part of it. So he plays slash runs, I think, a league with his buddies, where he's from in their neighborhood, and I
uh
don't
huh.
think they use like clean balls. I think they're like pretty dirty,
Uh,
beat up balls.
yeah.
So I think he's just trying to work on, going from pitching to that to pitching our style, because having that brand new
Yeah.
clean ball, you're going to get different movement than a beat up one. So I think he's just working on that a little bit too. I think an off season now where he knows that's what he had to work on. I expect him to be on the board more and
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah. That'd be a huge, huge boost.
Yeah, kind of
Um,
same thing with Connor Smith. He grew up playing the
uh
MLW
huh.
style, so he wasn't throwing
Sure.
clean balls either.
Scuffed
So
stuff.
just
Yeah.
learning that stuff.
Yeah. Stampede, I think the biggest question here for them is that the back of the pitching rotation, obviously, you've got Aiden and Holden, who are going to, each throw a full 25
Hmm.
innings, most likely. And then yeah, we talked about Dawson, we talked about Cade. Those guys are going to have to fill in, those rest of the innings. Um, and yeah, it's like an interesting question, right? Like, in that, Cade's going to be on the board. He doesn't offer a ton of upside, but he's effective. Or do you give some of those innings to Dawson, who might have a little bit higher potential to be something more? Because yeah, if he does figure something out and become an effective pitcher, that makes that rotation, that full 1 through 3, look pretty scary too.
It would make it very, very dangerous. Dawson's a guy, if he throws the wiffle ball, kind of that submarine style that I know he used to throw the baseball, he's a guy that, MLB, they have that stuff plus metric now. He's a guy that his wiffle
Right.
stuff plus is going to be a lot higher than a guy like, Cade, who's at least just giving you kind of that traditional over the top, two-seamer slider
Yep.
type look. So I'm very
Yeah, no doubt.
very intrigued to see how they work that out and how well they do. Both of them can throw the ball well. I mean, both baseball players.
Yep.
So if one of them figures it out, it'll be good. If both of them figure out, it could be really dangerous.
Yeah. They do have Tristan too, who got a decent amount of innings with the Hounds. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
suppose that's an option.
Tristan as a sixth man is. I haven't really gone
Probably
through
the best
it, but yeah,
sixth man in the league.
that's what I'm
yeah.
thinking. Probably the best sixth man in the league. They got a really great hitting five, really, because Holden can hit honestly too, but he's not one to really care about hitting. He doesn't have to hit,
Yeah.
is how I would describe it. He can hit, and when he does, he will swing really, really hard, but he
Yeah.
doesn't have to hit. So having five, and then even if they pull Tristan out, their four is very, very, very strong hitting wise. Like I know we mentioned earlier, but as far as a whole all around team is concerned, I think they did very, very well in setting them up as the best all around team here on paper going into the year.
Yeah. I believe Holden last season, he had 6 hits and 3 of them were home runs.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good,
He
pretty good percentage.
him and they had a guy, Tyler Punt, on the team last year too, who didn't
Yep.
sign up this year, but they swing so hard where it's like if they hit the
Yep.
ball, it's gonna go. There's just no doubt
Yep.
about it. And they're right through the zone. They're all over it. It's
Uh-huh.
just a matter of, are they going to hit this one or not? And pitching to them,
Yep.
it's terrible because you're like, I can't
Right.
leave this anywhere close to where the bat is. I wouldn't say they necessarily swing at different spots all the time. It's almost just like, hey, I'm hacking right here, and if the ball's there, it will be a homer. And like with
Yep.
wiffle ball,
Yep.
you can't always make sure the ball's not there.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of talking here, like Holden, we kind of mentioned some guys, but we probably have some different takes. But you have a player in mind on each team that you're really watching this year to see how they do.
Yeah, I like this question. There may be a little bit of redundancy here, but I think you can identify one guy on each team that could be a big swing piece. I think for the 8 balls, I would say Jay Wilsey, who could be, he threw a lot of innings for your Moonshots last year. Could be the best third arm in the league if he is reaching his top percentage
Yeah.
outcome, and that would really solidify the 8 balls rotation. And then if he locks down that 4th spot too, he doesn't always hit for the most power, but you and I both know puts
Puts the ball in play.
good at bats. Yeah, puts the ball in play. Doesn't make a whole lot of swing mistakes, right? So
Also,
could be a really
he's also a
valuable
very
guy.
underrated base runner. He does run himself out of, he gets himself out, but
Yeah.
he's athletic at running the bases and getting from base to base. He's just tends to be too aggressive 2 or 3 times a year where you're like, why did you go there? And then he gets out. If he could just kind of harness
Yeah.
that a little bit, just when they throw it away, stay at second. You don't have to get to third. Some of those. With how many times he puts the ball in play, that's really the only reason you notice it. It's because the ball's in play, so he's on the bases. So they're like,
a good
oh,
point,
he's
yeah.
running, he's way too aggressive, he's running into outs. And it's like, well, he's on
Yeah.
base enough to where you can actually notice that. So I think it's actually kind of an underrated skill from him. I think his base running is better than what you'd think at him getting on base and getting around. So
Yeah. Yeah, and a team that contains both Gurchef and Cody House could probably use a bump to, the speed and athleticism on the base pass.
Yeah,
So,
could use somebody trying to at least push for the 1 extra base. Maybe not the 2, but at least the 1.
yeah. Did you have anybody you wanted to mention too, or move on to the next one?
I mean, I want to see Bernie on the 8 balls and how he does as well. I think Jay, just from him being on the Moonshots last year too, very good pitcher, very very capable of being that number 3 guy. If the games are consistently going 5 innings, I could see him, kind of falling off in the third or fourth.
Yep.
Where Bernie coming in being a lefty right behind him, I think could be really
Yeah.
effective, especially if he comes right in being on the board too. So that's something that I'd want to look at. I did a similar thing with Jay and Connor Young last year. I think Bernie's
Yeah.
more consistent hitting the board than Connor Young was last year. So I think that could definitely be a thing to kind of work into. Or if you're facing a team that like has a lot of lefties and you think, hey, maybe this isn't a game for Jay because he can't quite like
Yeah.
aim the slider off of the guy. You can bring in Bernie
Yeah.
who has to go left on left for a team that, has a couple
point.
lefties. And I think he could
Yeah.
definitely get plenty of impactful innings that'll make a difference, I could see.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. One of the few teams that has like 4 legit arms, so that can afford to kind of split those innings up.
Yeah, can go in really in any inning and actually hit the board. You're not really worried about them not getting through the inning, which I think is very, very key.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for the shorts, Unversaw, you talked about him last year, is a pretty big swing player. If he's there all year, he should have the opportunity to, hit in the bottom of that order just about every day. Should be in the field for a lot of innings. And so, if he's a player who takes a step forward, like another one of those guys with tons of potential, like tons of upside, if he taps into that, that's going to do a lot for the bottom half of the shorts batting order.
Yeah, he's another guy, puts the ball in play a lot, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
He could work a little bit, kind of, I'd say some launch angles, kind of what I tried to work with him a little bit on the moonshots last year.
Yeah.
He was able to get it through the slow pitch at least. I mean, it's different animal fast pitch trying to get some launch, but he's a good one there. Devin Hensley for me is one. He was rookie of the year when he played for the Hounds. That was back when it was medium pitch. Really, really good athlete. If he can kind of hit the fast pitch and kind of this style of fast pitch in the summer, he's a guy that I think could play far over his value and be a really, really big addition to their lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, for the Hounds, it's the Sprink bias question again, right? Like this could be the best 1-2 in the league. It could also be a really disappointing one if they're, not around as much or, struggle to reach their potential. So I don't know. I just think it's a big question mark. It's maybe the biggest one coming into this season is how the two of those guys look on the mound this year and how many innings they're able to get out of each of them.
For sure. Sprinkle, we all know he's a number one type pitcher in our league all the time. Every time he cannot show up for a month and show up and give you, 6 innings of two hit wiffle ball. It's without touching a wiffle ball in a year. It's really crazy how good he is at just getting on the board and stuff right away. Mitch, the same way, throws really great. He's another guy that if he could be on the board just a little bit more, I would think he'd go up in the elite category. He's great, but as far as like the elite guys, they don't get to as many slow pitches, maybe 1 or 2 a game. I'd say Mitch is maybe like in the 4 to 5 slow pitches a game range. So he's like just one more guy or 2 a game from being on the board, and it could start early in the game if he's on it just a little bit more, get some more swings. But if those guys get there. If those guys play to their ceiling, their potential, kind of what people think about and how much they're going to be there, it's going to make the Hounds a very dangerous team throughout this regular season for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I was just looking at because there's something wrong with the stats page because it's telling me that Sprink had like a 486 batting average against last season, which is not true. It's like under 200. So I was gonna comment on like his ability to manage contact, but something weird with the stat thing there.
I wonder if he, because I know there's a couple games he had to leave early, and it wouldn't surprise me if people just didn't switch the pitcher out, or if like there's a slow pitch thing in there or something.
Who knows?
Something like that. It could be a fake fake news type deal.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, for the Yackers, it's got to be Buckman. Again, we saw him throw yesterday, and he looked really good. He's the biggest gamble in the league.
Yeah.
Though. Like, in 2021, was the last time that we saw him, and he was like, he started the All-Star game. I think he had like the best ERA in the league
Mm-hmm.
that year, like even, better than yourself
Yep.
and Reed. Probably was under, the two of you in total value there, but he's got like, top three or four pitcher in the league upside, right? Which is not something you can say about anybody else with a value that's short of 50 like his is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, then again, you just don't know after somebody's been away for a few years how they're going to bounce back. So, um, if Buckman has like a top three or four pitcher in the league type of year, like the Yackers are looking really scary, I think. Not only because they have sizable depth behind him in a way that, the shorts and the moonshots and the eight balls don't, because his value is so low
Mm-hmm.
coming off of a few years off.
He's got the ability to really be right up there with Whitty. Honestly, I think from pitching value, he's if he can
Yeah.
do what he's done. I mean, he even at when he was playing a couple years ago, he was still working some pitches that like weren't quite on the board yet. He wasn't really quite bringing them out. We
Hmm.
took him to an NWA. I think the one that I think it was the first year that we hosted. He was on the NWA roster, and we had guys telling us that he was throwing some of the best clean drops they've ever seen, and it was a pitch that he wouldn't even bring out in our league because he didn't want to walk you
Yeah.
and get to the slow pitch because it just wasn't quite on the board enough for him. So if he can
Yeah.
get all these kind of pitches together, there's no doubt in my mind that he can be like right up there with me, Whitty, Reed, as like guys that are
Yeah.
when they come onto the mound in the regular season, you're just thinking, hey, maybe we get to a jack off type game because we're not
Right.
going to hit them.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be huge.
yeah, and getting
Um,
Rudy that level of a pitcher too. Aiden has been right there the last couple of
yep.
years. Sometimes Aiden misses the board a little bit. That's kind of the thing because he throws so hard you don't quite know. And Aiden's a little bit
Yep.
more of a one pitch type guy where I know Buck has three pitches. I know it's like a drop, a
Yeah.
slider, and like kind of a sinker that he can kind of throw. So
Uh-huh.
just throwing the more pitches and being that level could be really key for Rudy maybe winning some of these game ones in the playoffs where then he can just win that game
Yep.
two and kind of be set.
Yep, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's a huge difference maker. I think Ian, for the moonshots is really could be the like missing piece for this roster, right? Like again, a one value guy, just because he hasn't been in the league.
Hmm.
Like he's got national wiffle ball experience. Like he's gonna be a two-way guy
Hmm.
in all likelihood, right? Like
Yep.
if he slots in as like a solid number two, that's something that the moonshots have, struggled to find in the last few years. And if he fills in, behind T. Greg and Connor in the batting order, again, that's like extra depth, length to the lineup. So yeah, I'm just really interested in seeing how he takes to the league this year because if he is, you know, able to, yeah, tap into some of that
Hmm.
potential that we know he has, that could be a really big game changer.
I'm very excited too. It's not often you're able to get guys with like good wiffle ball experience at kind of the value he's at. I think he's a prime
Yep.
candidate to kind of jump up in value. I know he hurt his knee I think a couple years ago. According to him, he's back and he's fresh, ready to
Hmm.
go. Some of the best shape that he's been in. One of those classic off season. He's in the best shape of his
Best
life
shape
coming
of his
into the
life.
season.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see what he is. He's gonna get innings. He's gonna get at bats for sure. I can attest to that since I'm the coach. And pitching wise, it's really between him and the two Connors, whichever two can kind of claim those jobs. I'm gonna give them
Yeah.
each the opportunities. I'm gonna work with them because I'm fine with whoever gets it because I just need somebody to get it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and then finally for the Stampede, I think maybe the highest profile player in this segment, but Cade had like a really down season last
Mhm.
year by his standards. Like really struggled, I think to start out the year, and that kind of compounded on him and wasn't able to really put together the offensive season that we expect from him. But as recently as the year before, he was like a top three hitter in the league, right?
Yes,
Um, it's like
led the league
I
in
think the
homers.
Stampede. Yes, yeah. Stampede like need a bounce back from Cade to really, compete at the top of the league. Like they've got Bundy to help, back up Cade in the lineup, but they need that elite bat. And so if Cade's able to put that sort of season together, then I think the Stampede are a really dangerous team.
Yeah, and the words elite bat I think are the key there. It's very hard to win a championship without some sort of an elite bat in our league. Even if you have even with a Whitty being as good of a pitcher as he is, he's still won with, Jones or himself being like the elite bat that's getting you the runner game. You need somebody to be able to step up for some of these top arms and say like, hey, I can get this done myself. I'm going to get the opportunities. Yep. So Dawson hit really well against Whitty last year, hit the ball well against me. But Cade is the guy where it's like he's got the highest potential to be that elite bat, fast pitch the whole way. Yep. Whatever you can get from him pitching or kind of other things is almost a bonus as long as he's just hitting the ball the way everybody knows he can hit the ball.
Yeah, for sure. I think, our player rankings will continue to come out here in the next few weeks, but he's like fairly low on the player rankings. And I think that in the commentary, it's like this has the highest potential to make us look really stupid in like a year's time because he could be the best hitter in the league this year,
He can come out in a 15-game season and have 15 homers, and it's honestly not even hard to expect. So if he can be that type of bat for that lineup, the way their pitching is set up, they're going to win a lot of games.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, going through each team, going through the power rankings, it's been really, really good having Jorf on, letting the world kind of know who you are, going through kind of what you see from an outside perspective. Just curious here as we're kind of wrapping up, if you have anything that you'd want to plug as kind of a wiffle ball insider, things that you're maybe looking forward to, or just kind of anything that you want to say.
Sure. Just stoked for the season, ready for it to start. It's been a long winter, a long off season for all of us, reporters included. And so I'm looking out, I've got my window open. It's like 65 degrees right now. It's like, it's coming. And so I'm just excited for all of this to start, to get back outside. I will say that I will continue to accept submissions on the reporting form. So if you've got any league news you want to plug or you want to share, feel free to do so. I may go dormant here, but will rise from my slumber whenever there's news in need of reporting.
That sounds good. People, you heard him. He's still taking, sources, links, if you want to get on there and tell them that. And that's not just people in the league. If you're a family member and you know a guy may not be playing anymore, you may know something. He may, hurt his elbow or something at golfing because he hit a rock because he got mad. Let Jorf know. Let that be out there so we can get some of this insider going throughout the season.
That'd be some great stuff.
That would be
like
so
somebody's
funny.
wife is like, he's going to be out for a week because he fucked around on the lawnmower and
slipped in the shower, threw out his back. We're getting older now, so it's stuff like that. Threw out his back washing his hair.
Exactly.
Can't swing the wiffle ball bat. He'll be out through the 4th of July.
I would love that.
That'd be really good. Well, Jorf, it was great having you. Great job coming on here, kind of talking about yourself. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more of you in the future. If not this year, coming into the next free agency, going through all that, and we'll continue to have you on the podcast.
No doubt. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. And that's going to end another episode here of Dirtyard Dish.